नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। शृण्वता स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवण कीर्तनं हृदयन्तोऽस्ति अभृदानि विधुनोति सुहृतं सतां। नष्टप्रायेष्व अभ्रदेषु नित्यं भागवति सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। All right, so I want to ask you guys something. Do you guys remember anything from last class? What happened in the last chapter? Who wants to answer? Anyone? Kipuranjaya. No? Okay, Vaibhav. What did we talk about last time?
It was about like I think like when they were like going to the field.
Yes.
And
What happened on the field?
Yeah, I can't remember fully.
Well, in short, Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjay that what happened on the battlefield of Kurukshetra when Pandavas and Kauravas assembled there. And after that, Dhritarashtra went to Dhritarashtra went to Dronacharya, and he's taunting Dronacharya and at the same time buttering Dronacharya. And then he mentions how the scene is on the both sides of the battle. And then it's basically Arjuna who is talking to Krishna that I'm not feeling well, I don't want to fight, they are my relatives. He became confused that what should I do. So that's all basically that happened in the first chapter, right? In a nutshell. So in this chapter, the real Bhagavad Gita begins. Even till the ninth or 11th shloka, Arjuna is speaking to Krishna that how he's feeling. And at the ninth shlok, he surrenders to Krishna that, oh Krishna, I'm not able to understand anything. What should I do? He's too confused that should I kill them or should I just leave the fight? So he surrenders to Krishna as a spiritual disciple and considering Krishna as his master. That, oh Krishna, now you are the one who is going to teach me. So tell me, what should I do? So this is how this chapter begins, and Krishna starts speaking Bhagavad Gita. So the very first shloka of the chapter, as you can see on the screen, Sanjay is talking to Dhritarashtra. Now Sanjay said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana Krishna spoke the following words. Now in this shloka, a specific name of Krishna has been used, Madhusudan. Do you know why we called Krishna Madhusudan? Well, Krishna at a time killed a demon whose name was Madhu, and Sudan means killing. So Madhusudan. And Madhu, what did he do? He stole the knowledge of Brahmaji. He was the first hacker in the world. So he stole the knowledge of Brahmaji. And Krishna killed him and gave the knowledge back to Brahmaji. So that's why Sanjay is saying to Dhritarashtra that yes, Arjuna is very depressed right now. Arjuna don't want to fight, but he specifically uses Madhusudana But no worries, Dhritarashtra, because Madhusudan is with him. He's going to clear his doubts. He's going to get his knowledge back. So that's why he says Madhusudan in this passage, in this shloka. So basically, till 11th shloka, it's all conversation between Arjuna, how he's describing, and about Sanjay. What happened now? All right. So in this shloka, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to the higher planets, but to infamy." Now, Krishna is very surprised here that how come, like in the last chapter, Arjuna is all talking about how he's not able to fight. What he gave different reasons to Krishna. And now Krishna is starting to speak that, "Oh, Arjuna, how these impurities have come upon you. Like you are a Kshatriya, your duty is to fight, you are an intelligent guy, you are already a self-realized soul. Then how come these impurities come upon you? Why are you acting as a non-Aryan?" Now, there are two personalities. One is called Aryan, one is called non-Aryan. Now, Aryan are those people who have full spiritual knowledge, who knows what is the goal of life, who knows how to live life properly with scriptural injunctions, and who are basically totally spiritual. But on the other side, we have people called as non-Aryans, who may be learned, who may be like intelligent, but they don't have any spiritual knowledge. They don't know what is the goal of life. So those people are called non-Aryans. So Krishna is telling that why are you acting as a non-Aryan? You are an Aryan. You should fight. Now see, if there is a fight between India and Pakistan, a war between India and Pakistan or any country, if Indian soldier goes to the border of Pakistan and starts to fight, and before the fight begins, he's saying that, "Oh no, I'm feeling compassion on these Pakistani soldiers. I don't want to kill them. They are good people. Why there is fight? We don't have to fight just for a country or just for enjoying, right?" So it's basically that's what's happening here.
Let's
Arjuna
not
is like,
example though. Let's not
so
take this example. Sorry, guys.
so basically that's what's happening here. An Indian soldier who's Arjuna is on the Pakistani border field in front of Kauravas, and he's refusing to fight. So Krishna is saying that this is not good for you. In this way, you will be having total infamy. People will curse you. People will not like that a soldier came back from the battlefield just because he was compassionate to other soldiers. It's his duty, right? Just as a soldier's duty is to protect the battlefield, is to protect the country. Similarly, Arjun's duty as a Kshatriya is to fight right now. And that's why Krishna is asking him that you have to fight. How come these impurities? How come these compassion on the other side of your other side on the enemies have come upon you? Got it? So let's move forward. O son of Pratha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such pretty weakness of heart and arise, O chastister of enemy. So he's basically just scolding Arjuna. Then Arjuna starts speaking. Now, giving arguments that I don't want to fight. O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? Now, in the last chapter, we talked about that Bhishma represents material relationships and Drona represents material knowledge. So similarly, as on the other hand, also they're relatives too. So Arjuna is very much confused right now. His all material knowledge and material relations are coming on his duty, that he's not able to perform his duty because of material relationships and material knowledge. Similarly, that same thing happens in spirituality or in bhakti. Sometimes what happened that you have too much material knowledge that we talked about last time, that how is scriptures true, how the sun rises, what, and all the things. You don't believe what scripture says because of the scientific knowledge that you already have in your mind. Or on the other hand, family relationships. And these two things are hindrances on the path of bhakti. So that's what Krishna is addressing here, that how come material relations and material knowledge, who are represented as Bhishma and Drona, because of them you are refusing to fight. Now, you see, Dronacharya is guru of Arjuna. Now, Actually, Guru means that personality who saves you from hell. Guru. Gu means hell and Ru means the personality who saves you from hell. That personality is called Guru. Now, in today's world, we call even our math teacher, science teacher Guru. But in Sanskrit, in actual way, they are not gurus. They are adhyapak. They are the ones who teach you material knowledge. But the person who teaches you spiritual knowledge, that is called as Guru. Because with spiritual knowledge, you can be saved from different conditions of hellish life. That's why a specific word is Guru. And Krishna and Arjuna is saying that how can I kill my own Guru? That personality who has given me all the knowledge. How can I kill him? So he's very confused here. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. So just giving arguments like that they are my teachers, how can I kill them? Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. Total confused. Now I am confused about my duty and I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and the soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Now here's the shloka where Arjuna is finally admitting, yes, I am confused and I don't know what to do. I don't know whether should I kill them, whether should I run from the fight, whether should I fight. So he's totally confused here. So here's the shloka when he surrenders to Krishna. And this is how spiritual life begins. This is how bhakti begins. This is how the process of getting knowledge begins. Once you surrender to a guru, once you accept someone as a guru, that's how the spiritual life begins. Now, Arjuna, before earlier this shloka, he's acting with Krishna as a friend. Just as, conversating with a friend that I am very sad, I can't fight, I'm giving all the problems. But here, he's like, I'm totally surrendering unto you. Now, whatever you do, I will do. And that's what Krishna wanted. That's why he got Arjuna in front of Bhishma and Drona. So this shloka is there where he tells it how to surrender completely and understand the truth. I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. Now see, Arjuna is admitting the same thing again and again, giving it so much importance that I don't know what to do. Even if I win, how can I be happy? Because my family would be killed. And if there is no family, how can I enjoy? How can I enjoy even if Indra's whole kingdom is with me if there is no family? So same thing, that so much attached to family that he's refusing to do his own duty. So he's just arguing with Krishna again and again. Now Sanjay said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not file, and fell silent. Now Sanjay told this to Dhritarashtra, that this is what is happening on the battlefield. That yes, Arjuna surrendered to Krishna and he's telling him that I'm not able to fight. And this made Dhritarashtra felt very good because that's what Dhritarashtra wanted. That if Arjuna would not fight, then definitely there will be no battle. And definitely the Kauravas will be the winner and he would not have to leave his throne. So he's very happy. He became very happy when Sanjay told him this. But in the next verse, let's see, Sanjay tells him, O descendant of Bharata, at that time, Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. Now, in the next line, he's breaking that happiness of Dhritarashtra. That, oh, Dhritarashtra, don't worry. Yes, you are happy because Arjuna is not going to fight. But in the next line, he says that, yes, now Krishna is starting to speak. Krishna is smiling. Now, this smile is very important. You see, whenever you ask a personality who's a higher authority For example, if you ask something to your teachers and you are very confused and you go to your teachers, they have a very soothing smile on their face that at least this personality, this student has come to me and asked for the question. Now, this smile gives so many things that it makes Arjuna calm, that don't worry, he knows what the answer is. So Krishna is telling him that, okay, don't worry, I'm going to start speaking to you. Don't worry, I will make your confusion go away. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Now, as a spiritual master, as a teacher, Krishna is starting to scold Arjuna. He's starting to chastise Arjuna that, oh, Arjuna, you seem to be very learned, but you are talking all ignorance. You're seeing other personalities as your uncles, as your brothers, as your relatives, but you are forgetting your duty. And because of that, he's chastising Arjuna that how come this happens? You are a learned personality and you are speaking these kinds of words. Now here's the first shloka of Bhagavad Gita, 2.12. This is where the Bhagavad Gita begins. Earlier, it's just a conversation between Arjuna and he's telling Krishna. Now see, Krishna starts speaking. The very first knowledge he gave to Arjuna is this. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Now Krishna is telling that there was no time when I did not exist as Krishna, when you did not exist, and the other personalities, Bhishma, Drona, and others did not exist. It's not like whether you're going to kill them and that's it, it's the end of life. Well, life is not that. It's not just it starts with birth and ends with the killing or death. Krishna is telling them that there was not a single time, there was not a single time period when you did not exist, when I did not exist, and when all these personalities did not exist. So Krishna is starting to give him the knowledge of the soul now in the next few verses, that why he's saying this, that why is it like all these personalities exist, even in the past, in the present, and the future also they're going to exist. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Now Krishna is telling about the soul. You see, when I was very small, like a kid, like you guys, I was still Sudhanshu. When I was born, I was still Sudhanshu. When I became an adult, I was still Sudhanshu. And when I'm 22 years old, I'm still Sudhanshu. And when I'm going to be old, I'll still be Sudhanshu, right? So this body started growing from a very small size, right? From a child to young, from adult, then to middle age, then to old age. But the personality inside this body never changed. Yes, he learned some new things, but did that person change inside this body? Will it be like Puranjay when he's small and when Puranjay is 60 years old, it will be different personality inside the body? No, right? Puranjay will always be Puranjay. Yes, he'll be more mature, he'll be more learned. That's what Krishna is telling, that this body is just like an instrument. This body is just like a cloth. Similarly, like we change clothes every day, right? Every day, every morning, every night, we change clothes. So that's what Krishna is telling, that it's not like you're going to kill them and that's the end. After you kill them, they're going to get a new body. There is never a time when they will not exist. Yes, they are in this body and you're considering him as Bhishma, as Drona, as Duryodhana, as Dronacharya, but they're always going to exist. When they die, their soul will pass to a new body. That's it. And Krishna is saying the personality who knows this should not be lamenting, should not be sad when at the time of death, because it's just a change of body. He should be happy that, oh, I'm going to get a new body. This body has become old. This body has got white hairs. This body had become diseased. And he should be happy that, yes, at the time of the death, I'm going to get a new body. So that's what Krishna is telling, that there is no reason to be sad, Arjuna. Even if you kill them, they are going to get a new body. So why are you not killing them? It's your duty. Do your duty first. You're a Kshatriya. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O skier of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Now, the thing is, yes, I understood that I am a soul, that I am never going to die. Then what about the problems of life? What about diseases of life? What about various ups and downs of life? Why are they there? What should I do with them? So Krishna is telling them all these ups and downs, all these problems in life, all these various problems that everyone has in his own life, they're always going to be there. But it's not like we should not do our duty and because of the problems. For example, your mother, she makes food every day for you, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. Has there been ever time that she has said, okay, it's winter season now, I should not cook at home? Or it's summer season, or it's summer season and the kitchen is very hot and I'm not going to cook. No, right? She's always doing her duty. She's always cooking for you, whether it's heat, whether it's cold, whether she's sad, whether she's happy. She's doing her duty as a mother. So that's what Krishna is telling him, that all these problems are going to come to your life. But it's not like you stop these duties and because of these problems, you just leave your duty. You have to face the problems. The problems are always going to be there. Whether they be material problems, whether there be any financial problems, whether there be family problems, they're always going to be there. No one, a single personality, even in the heavenly planets, even in the middle planets, even in the lower planets, there is not a single personality who has no problems in life. Everyone is unhappy. Everyone has some kinds of problems in life. But it doesn't mean that you leave your duty because of those problems. For example, you're a student, you're studying, your duty is to study right now. You may say, okay, I got less marks in maths this time, so I'm going to leave maths now. I'm never going to study maths in my life. It's not like that, right? If you get less marks, you study more, you get more marks. It's not like you leave your duty of studying and just go and take a sannyas that, okay, I got less marks, there is problem in life. So that's what Krishna is telling, that, okay, Arjuna, I understand that you have a problem right now, you have confusions right now, they are your relatives, but it doesn't mean that you are not going to fight, do your duty, and understand that yes, the problems are always going to be there, and do not be disturbed by those problems, but do your duty. O best among Arjuna, O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Now see, as I said, the problems are always going to be there. And Krishna is giving the practical application of the spirituality in life. That understanding that, yes, I am a soul, I am not this body. All the problems that are there in this life are basically the problems of body, whether it be disease, whether it be whether it be infamy, or whether it be someone is chastising you, someone is scolding you. It's not like someone is scolding you. It's not like someone is chastising you. You are not a body. You're a soul. The problems are there in the life, but not for you, but for the body. So Krishna is giving a practical application that by understanding that you are a soul, you're not this body, you should not be disturbed by the problems and you should learn to tolerate them. And the only person who learns to tolerate the problems in life can become a better person. Only that person is eligible for liberation. Only a great personality who knows how to handle different situations of life, whether it be any kind of problems. You have to face those problems, never run from problems. And the personality who does that, that is a personality who can become a better person. Even you see in business life, even in student life, even in marriage life, problems are always going to be there. There are always going to be some misunderstandings, but it's not like because of some misunderstandings, because of some problems in business, because of some less marks in study, you leave business, you leave your marriage. They're always going to be there. You have to face those problems and always tolerate them, because that way you will develop more patience. You will develop more patience for the problems and more tolerance. You'll be a successful person in life. So these three shlokas gives the practicality that how to think of the problems, how to tolerate those problems, and how to advance in life with the help of spirituality, even in material life. Any questions till now? Or should we carry on? All right. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, this material body, there is no endurance, and the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. See, this body, this skin, these bones, these muscles, what are they? They're made of what? Different 5 elements like earth, water, fire, air, ether, bones, mucus, and various other calcium, phosphate, these kind of chemicals, right? This body is just a mixture of chemicals. But if you see around you, everything is a mixture of chemicals, whether it be stones, whether it be any non-material thing, whether it be a toy, everything is basically chemically composition. So the thing is, Krishna is telling them that these non-living entities, actually this body is also non-living entity. If you see, what is the difference between a living guy and a dead guy? Well, the body is still there. The elements are still there. He still have bones, he still have muscles, but he's dead. Why? Because the soul has left the body, right? So it's basically the soul which is living, not the body. This body is already dead. This body, this mouth which I'm speaking with you is already dead. It's a dead matter. But that dead matter is able to speak to you because of the presence of soul. This is the soul which gives the consciousness. This is the soul which gives you the intelligence. It's not the body. Body is just a dead matter. So that's what Krishna is telling, that, oh Arjuna, don't be worried about the body. That body is going to die, not maybe now, maybe 10 days from now, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 50 years from now. The body is just a chemical composition. There will be time when this body, which is made of earth, water, fire, ether, it's going to mix again into earth, water, fire, ether. So you should not be worried about the body, but you should be worried about the soul. Even in this life, as a student, as a students, whatever we are doing, basically we are doing for our body, right? We live in a house, we eat something, we make money for the body. And yes, that is the necessities of life. We have to do them. But what are we doing with the soul? Because we are not a body, we are a soul. So for the soul, there is spirituality. For a soul, there is bhakti. The food for a soul is God consciousness. The food for the soul is the relationship with God. So we have to give more importance to the soul. And for the body, we have to work for the necessities, not having so many desires in life. Like, okay, I want a Lamborghini. I want a Mercedes S-Class. I want a Range Rover. Or I want a very big mansion. Well, because if these desires come in our mind, if these desires come in our consciousness, then we are always going to work very hard like asses. Gadhon ki tarah kaam karenge, right? So Krishna is telling that you have to identify yourself with the soul first. And then the priority comes that yes, work for your body, but for the necessities. Work for your family, but for the necessities, not for the desires, not for the desires which are way too high, which can't be fulfilled. And give more priority to the soul, give more priority to spiritual life. That is what Krishna is teaching in this verse. And whatever you know, let me tell you something. Whatever you do in spirituality, whether you just say one time Ram, one time Krishna, or one time you read Bhagavad Gita in your life, that knowledge is going to stay with you throughout the bodies. That Krishna will tell in the following chapters. That even if you take a single step in spirituality, no matter what you do, that step is permanent. It's not like that step is going to diminish. That step is going to get away after this life. Whatever you learn about spirituality, whatever you learn about Krishna in this life, whatever you do for Krishna in this life, that is a permanent thing that you will get the credit for. For example, you did 1% bhakti in this life or 10% bhakti in this life. In the next life, it's not like you have to start from 1%. You will be starting from 10%. You will automatically have that consciousness in you, that you will already have that knowledge with you. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are so many stories regarding that. You have already read Srimad Bhagavatam, like the story of Jad Bharat Maharaj, right? So whatever you do, even if you're learning Bhagavad Gita now, that knowledge is going to stay with you even in this life, even in the next life. So whatever you do in spirituality, it's always permanent. So we should always be very eager to do for the soul, not for the body. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore fight, O descendant of Bharata. Now Krishna is telling the same thing again and again, that fight with him. Don't worry about the body. They are going to get a new body. You do your duty. You're a Kshatriya. You have to save your kingdom. You have to follow the religious. You are on the side of dharma, and they are on the side of adharma. They are not right. So don't worry. Do your duty and don't worry about the body, but worry about the soul. Neither he who thinks the living entity, the slayer, nor he who thinks it is slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. What is the verse? 19th. So Krishna is telling that the person who thinks that death is the ultimate reality, that after death, there is nothing, or after I have been died or killed by someone or whatever, however we are going to die. It is not like that's the end. So Krishna is saying that whoever thinks in that way, that this life is this life only. This is the time I have to enjoy. This is the only time I'm going to enjoy. So I have to do my full in this life and enjoy to the fullest extent because this is the only life I'm getting. Krishna says that person is not in knowledge. The person who is knowledge knows that this life is not the only life. After you die, you're going to get a new life, a new body. Maybe an animal body, maybe a human body, depends on your karma. But the knowledge of the soul, the person who knows that is the person is in knowledge, not the person who doesn't know anything about soul. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Now, do you know what is the size of soul? In scriptures, the size of the soul is given. If you take your hair, just one hair, and you divide that hair into 10,000 times. Now, one hair is very thin, right? Very thin. If you take that one hair and you divide it into 10,000 times, that is the size of soul. That is your size. Just 10,000 of the tip of the hair is the size of the soul. And it is that soul from which comes the consciousness. And it is that soul which gives this body the energy to run. So you can imagine how powerful the soul would be. Well, the Krishna states that the soul is never born and never die. And it's not like the soul took birth. The soul is eternal. You are eternal. In the next words, I'm going to talk about this. Let's move forward first. Oh Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Now let's do an exercise. Everyone, close your eyes first. Everyone close your eyes and say what I'm going to say. I can never die. Say, I can never die. No one can kill me. Fire can't burn me. Water can't make me wet. No weapon can kill me. No gun can kill me. I can never die. I'm always eternal. I never took birth. And I am a soul. Now open your eyes. So what did you feel? Well, did you feel some kind of self-confidence? That, okay, I'm not going to die. I'm never going to be killed by someone. Doesn't it gives you little self-confidence? Yes or no? Because you see, in human form of life, we are always thinking that, okay, I have to enjoy because when death comes, everything is finished. But if you know that, okay, I can never be killed, I'm eternal, I can never die. No fire can burn me. No water can make me wet. No sword can kill me. No gun can kill me. Doesn't it give self-confidence? Well,
Yeah.
that's the knowledge of the self. This is what spiritual knowledge does to you. First of all, spiritual knowledge gives you self-confidence that don't worry about the body. And once you know who you are, that you are a soul, not a body, then you keep giving more priority to the soul, not to the body. Because you know the body is going to die, but not I am not going to die. Sudhanshu is never going to die. Puranjay is never going to die. We are all eternal. This is what spiritual knowledge starts with. Giving you the knowledge that, okay, be self-confident first. Don't be afraid in life. Let's move forward. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Well, as I said, when you get old, you don't even have teeth. All your teeth fall down. You have no hair. You become bald. Or if you're lucky, you get white hairs. Well, you become diseased. You're not able to move even properly. You need help of other people. So isn't it a good change that when you die, you get a new body? Or is it a bad change? It's a good change, right? You don't have to worry. But yes, the thing is, even if you get a new body, then again, you have to die. You work your whole life, you make home, you make family, you make friends, you make money, you make property, but at the end, nothing goes with you. Well, when we know this, when we realize this, that's the time when we want to be spiritual. That's the time when we want to do bhakti. That's the time when we want to read scriptures. That's the time when we want to improve ourselves. So Krishna is saying, don't worry about the body, because after you die, you're going to get a new body, just as you change clothes every day. Similarly, the soul changes its body after the body is dead. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Well, wherever it says soul, think of it yourself. Okay, Sudhanshu, no one cut to you, and no one can cut you with any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind. That way you will basically be a little more confident in life. Even in problems come in life, that okay, the problems are temporary, but I am eternal. Problem cannot do nothing to me. That way you become more successful person, more patient, more control over mind, more control over your emotions. And that's how you become successful in life, even in material, even spiritual life. The individual soul is unbreakable, insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. Let's read it this way. Okay, me, I'm unbreakable. I'm insoluble. I can neither be burned nor dried. I'm everlasting. I'm present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally all the same. Well, to me, it gives so much self-confidence. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. So basically, Krishna is hammering the point again and again to Arjuna. Because you see, we humans, we don't get a point very easily. We have to, well, someone if tells it same thing again and again, again and again, that's the time when we realize something. That's the time when we grasp it. So Krishna is telling Arjuna again and again about the nature of the soul. That, oh, Arjuna, listen to this carefully. Don't be worried about the body. Just kill them. They're going to get a new body and save your kingdom and save your religion, save the side of dharma. If, however, you think that the soul will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. Now Krishna is giving him another scenario that, okay, if you don't accept this knowledge, if you don't accept that, yes, you are eternal, and even if you think that, okay, I am going to die, but in the line, Krishna also says that, okay, the soul maybe dies, but it will take birth again. Then why to worry? Maybe, yes, the soul will not get a new body for some time, but after some time, if it's going to get a new body again, then why worry? Just kill them. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Now see, in today's scientific world, scientists are trying to make different kinds of medicines. There is whole research going on that how to be immortal, how to live for 200 years, 300 years. Science is doing so much research on this that how is it like we never die? But the point is, whoever has taken birth, he has to die. This is the law of nature. There is not a single personality who has taken birth and never dies. So this is a reality. And Krishna is telling Arjuna, accept this reality. And because of this reality, don't be afraid of discharging your duty. Just like a Indian soldier or Pakistan soldier. If Indian soldier thinks that, okay, if I die, I will never take birth, so I should run from the battlefield. I should save my life. But if he has knowledge of the self, he would not be hesitated to kill the other person or even getting himself killed for the side of dharma. Because he knows that he is not going to die. He's going to take birth again. And the other person who is going to kill is also going to take birth again. Now, it doesn't, promote fighting or killing someone, but it is just for the matter. It's just for giving you self-realization. It's just giving you self-confidence and giving you the importance of priority of spiritual life. It's not like, okay, I'm going to kill let's say in a house, you have a ant or a mosquito going somewhere and you kill him. Okay, it's fine. He's going to get a new body. It's not like that. Nature has made certain laws. It's not like, okay, I'm going to eat a chicken today. I'm going to eat beef today. Doesn't matter. Chicken is going to, if the hen is going to die, he's going to get a new birth. It's not that. It is to understand that, okay, I don't have to be worried about too much about the body, but I have to worry about the soul. It's not like I just go and start doing fishing and start killing fishes and eat fishes because thinking that, okay, it's just a fish. I can enjoy a fish. I can eat a fish. And after that fish is good, it's going to get a new body. Well, that is a sin. Nature has made certain laws that what is right, what is wrong. We are not supposed to kill anyone for any reason, whether it be any animal, whether it be a small mosquito, whether it be a aquatic species, or whether it be cows or anything. So Krishna will talk about this going forward in the few chapters, that it doesn't mean that you start killing people. That, okay,
So
yes.
I have a question. What
Yes.
about 7 Chiranjeevis?
Yes, Chiranjeevis. See, even Brahmaji, I'll come to Chiranjeevis later, even Brahmaji. Now, Brahmaji is not eternal. Brahmaji, even Chiranjeevis, there is a specific time that for what time they are going to live. And what time is that? See, after one day of Brahma consists of 4,000 yugas, which means 1,000 cycle of 4 yugas. So Satya Yug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, Kali Yug. When the cycle, this is called one cycle of yugas. When 1,000 such cycle passes, one day of Brahma passes. These Chiranjeevis that we have, they live for one day of Brahma. Now, one day of Brahma, how much is it in mathematical calculations? It's about 432 crore years. That's one day of Brahma, morning time, and night time the same. So all the Chiranjeevis, they live, but for a specific time of the day of Brahma. And that day is 432 crore years. Even Chiranjeevis have a life of 432 crore years. And after that, according to their, like Ashwathama is a Chiranjeevi, and Hanumanji is a Chiranjeevi. Now these, we have a contradiction here. Hanumanji and Ashwathama. Ashwathama is a bad personality, and Hanumanji is a devotee of the Lord. Now, after this 4,000 yugas pass, Hanumanji is going to back to Vaikuntha, back to the Leelas of the Lord. But Ashwathama has to take another bodies because of his past deeds, the way he killed the sons of Pandavas. So Chiranjeevis do live for a very long time, but that long time is one day of Brahma, which is 432 crore years. And after they have to go back. Maybe if they are eligible to Vaikuntha, or otherwise again in the cycle of birth and death. So that is what the pure definition of Chiranjeevi is. No one lives immortally except God. Even Brahma, even Garbhodakshay Vishnuji, even Shivji, they all manifest for a certain time, for a certain function. But for example, Brahma is a great devotee of the Lord. Shivji is a great devotee of the Lord. Shivji is basically an expansion of the Lord. So they all are eternal. Vishnuji is eternal. It's all, they all manifest, unmanifest again into one body. Got it? Yes. So no one lives forever. Even Brahmaji also, the creator of the universe. He also has to die. His life is 100 years. You know what 100 years is? His life? If just imagine, if one day of Brahmaji is 432 crore years on this planet Earth, what would be his 100 years of life? Well, it will be 864 crore years multiplied by 12, multiplied by 30, multiplied by 100, which brings about 355 trillion years. That's the age of Brahmaji, out of which about 50% of his life has passed away. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for the lamentation? See, as we were talking about that after Brahmaji dies, or even one day of Brahmaji is over, the whole creation is basically without the souls. For the night time, the souls are not there in the creation. When the night time of Brahmaji arises, the soul again enters into the body of Vishnuji. They take rest there. It's just considered as a sleeping time. Just as you sleep in the night, similarly, when Brahmaji's day ends, when 432 crore years or 4,000 yugas pass, after that, the souls become unmanifested in Vishnuji, in Garbhodakshay Vishnuji, the second expansion of Vishnuji. And once another day of Brahmaji starts, again creation starts, and again the souls manifest again and attains different bodies according to their past karmas. But still, they never die. They just become unmanifest, or you can say sleep for some time. Any questions till now? All right. Some look as the soul, amazing. Some describe him as amazing. Some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand it at all. Now see, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, when I gave the introduction of Bhagavad Gita, I told you that bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschahashmi tatpatah. That without devotion, without surrender to God, no one can understand God. And same comes for a soul. Until and unless you don't have a little bit surrender, little bit devotion to God, it's not easy to understand the nature of soul. Let's say if I go to a material scientist who doesn't believe in God, or if I go to an atheist who doesn't believe in the existence of God at all, he would not be able to understand the nature of soul. Even if I explain him whole day to night, he'll still understand nothing, right? But if someone knows the nature of the Lord, if someone knows that yes, there is a supreme personality of Godhead, then everything makes sense. Everything makes sense on its own, that yes, soul is there. Yes, I am not a body. Yes, after I die, I get a new body. And even scientists today, there's a scientist called Dr. Ian Stevenson. Dr. Ian Stevenson, you can search on Google. In about 50, 60 years ago, he started a research on this soul. That is it true that after someone dies, he gets a new body? Is it true there is punarjanam? Is it true that there is past life? Well, he did a research. And if you search on Google, he took about 50 years to do this research. And during this research, he found so many cases in which people were able to remember their past life, in which people had some birthmarks from their past lives. Well, a person got shot in France, and after he took birth in America. And when he took birth in America, he remembered he had the same, the mark of the gunshot on his head. So he went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist did his own thing, hypnotizing and all that thing. And he was able to understand that, yes, he was killed in the last life. And that's why he has a birthmark or a mark of the gun shot there. And when that scientist, Ian Stevenson, tried to, he told that, okay, I was in this specific city. I took birth in a specific city in the past life. So he went to the France and tried to look for the place. He did not found it. So he got the, past maps of France. You see, even in India, maybe Amritsar is called Amritsar now, or Delhi is called Delhi now. But 500 years ago, Delhi was called something else. 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, it was called Hastinapur, where this battle happened, right? So the name of the places keep on changing with time. So he looked up the maps of past few hundred years, and he found the same place that he was talking about, the same map, the same place where he took birth, the same incident recorded in history, that yes, there was a personality who got shot. And this way he got so many proofs, Dr. Ian Stevenson, that yes, past life exists, scientific proofs, scientific researches. That's why even in today in America, about 50, 60 years ago, only 3% of Americans used to believe that yes, there is past life, there is soul, there is God. But now more than 50% believe that yes, past life exists, there is punarjanam, there is incarnation, because they have scientific researches now. So that's what, if you have little bit knowledge of the God, that yes, if you believe the God exists, if you believe that yes, if you believe that God exists, and you have little bit love for God, little bit gratitude for the Lord, then it is very easy to understand soul, that okay, I am not a body, I'm a soul, I am eternal, I can never die, I take birth again. It's very easy to understand. Everything falls into place. But as soon as we kick God out of the picture, that okay, there is no God, God doesn't exist, it's only me and it's only this nature, I have to enjoy this nature, then there are so many confusions in life. That why some people take birth in a good family, why some people take birth in a bad family, why someone is an ant, why someone is a human being, why some problems come in specific person's life, why some problems come in specific person's life. Well, everything makes sense when you understand the nature of God and the nature of the soul. That okay, it's past karmas, it's past lives, that is why I took birth in this specific family, I took birth in this specific nation, I belong to this specific religion. Everything makes sense when you enter God into the picture. So that's what Krishna is talking about. If you don't have, because some people look at it as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some even after understanding it cannot understand it. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. Now, this is basically a practicality. Let's say if a very loved one dies, then Krishna is saying you don't have to be too lament. Yes, the sadness will be there because you are attached to that personality, but you don't have to lament. You don't have to, just give up everything that, oh, my loved one died. And I have seen this example in my real life also. Like there are some people when they die and the family is too much attached to them, they basically try to harm themselves, try to cut their nerves that, okay, he died, I'm also going to die. I can't live without him. So Krishna is telling them, okay, with this spiritual knowledge, first understand that no one dies. It's just a change of bodies. And when you know this, you're not too attached to everyone, and you should not lament for it. You should not grieve for it. Yes, the sadness will be there, but you should not do some mad things like killing yourself, harming yourself, giving up your duties because someone died. That's what Krishna is talking about, that this self-knowledge, this knowledge of the soul tells you that, okay, I'm eternal, I don't die. And I can keep on living my life even if someone dies. I can be practical in life with spirituality. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. So there is no hesitation. So Krishna is telling him, okay, now you understand that, okay, they are souls, they are not the body. Now do your duty. You are a Kshatriya. Your duty is to save your side from the battle, from the killing. And so for that, you have to kill other personalities. So do your duty, save the side of dharma and fight. O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of heavenly planets. Now, this will be the last verse for today. So, in this, Krishna tells that a person like Kshatriya, if the fight is a dharam yudh, for example, it was the fight between Pandavas and Kauravas. If it's a dharam yudh, then if someone dies in that battle, then it's not like he will go to hell because he did something wrong or something, but because these fighting opportunities of dharam yudh, like Kurukshetra, like Ramayan, they all are an opportunity for the Kshatriyas to go to heavenly kingdoms. If they die in the war, and if they die on the war fighting for dharma, they will go to heavenly planets. But it doesn't mean that what is happening today. You see, in Muslim religion, people are trying to kill other personalities because they don't follow Muslim religion. They try to force them that, okay, if you don't become Muslim, we will kick you out of the country. They will have wars. And same thing is happening from so many 100 years. So many bomb blasts in America, so many fights between India and Pakistan, so many fights between other countries because of this. They are not dharam yudh. They are just for selfish purposes. They are just for material gains. Okay, I want this land, I want Kashmir, so I'm going to fight with India. Or I'm going to convert people to Muslim, so I'm going to fight. This is not dharam yudh. So there is a specific line between dharam yudh and what is happening today. So Krishna says in dharam yudh, if you die, then you go to heavenly kingdom. And even if you win the fight, then you will enjoy this earth, because the whole earth will be yours, Arjuna. So fight. Why? What is there to lament? Even if you die, or even if they die, they will go to heaven. And even if you win, then you will enjoy the kingdom. So do your duty and fight. So that's what Krishna is basically talking about here. And from the next verses, Krishna will start explaining about Karam Yoga, that how should we work in the life? How should we do our duties? What consciousness should we have when we do our duties? Anything, any question till now, or any comments till now?
It was a heavy subject. And
Starting how the soul, what the soul is, or who we are actually, not the soul.
right. So basically, do your duty and don't worry about the body. If
Well,
you do like for dharma, If you have to fight, fight. Don't worry about who the person you're fighting with is. If they are in that side, you have to stand up against them.
Like if I give you an example, in Bangladesh, there are Muslims who are killing people. They are destroying temples and killing people who are there in the temples, just because they think that they are going to go to heaven by killing them. They consider that as a dharam yudh, but that's not actually dharam yudh. So it's not, Krishna doesn't, provoke people to fight. He's just giving you self-confidence that don't worry even if you're not successful in life, even if you're not able to, basically he's teaching what priorities you should give. The priority should be the soul, not the body. The priority should be engaging in spirituality, engaging in grasping more knowledge about yourself, and trying to be devoted to God. Because that way you will be, and Krishna will talk about this throughout Bhagavad Gita, that how to get liberation, what is the process, how to live this life when you are in this body. So Krishna is telling you that, okay, you are not a body, you're a soul, but by understanding that, you have to give priority to the soul, not to the body. This body is a dead matter, which is looking like living because of the presence of soul. So give more priority to the soul and keep on doing your duties for the necessities of life. Don't have too much desires that I want a Lamborghini, I want a big house, I want whatever. But working on your duties for necessities of life, for food, for a nice home, for a good family, to make your family, healthy living, to study. Do it as much as necessary. Don't have too much desires. Do your duties, but at the same time, give more priority to spirituality. That is what basically Krishna is teaching here.
Tia has a question. Tia
Yes.
and everybody else, if you have any questions, just jump in and ask. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Pranjal.
Like the Kauravas, why did the Kauravas like did their father ask the Kauravas to do all the taking of land or everything, or did the Kauravas themselves think of it?
Well, yes and no. Basically, no, because Dhritarashtra did tried. Okay, we should give it, because Krishna came as a Shanti Doot, as a Shanti Doot. What should I say Shanti Doot in English?
Messenger. He was like a peacemaker. He tried to make.
So Krishna tried to, stop the fight and went to Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra and all the ministers agreed that, okay, Krishna just said, okay, don't give us the whole kingdom, just give us 5 small villages. That's it. We will be happy with that. But Dhritarashtra said, okay, we can do that. But his son, Duryodhan, he was the main evil personality. He was the one who refused even that. He said, no, okay, I want everything. He was the one who was totally greedy. And even Dhritarashtra, yes, because Dhritarashtra was very much, because if you go to the even more history, even more background story, it's Dhritarashtra who did wrong. Dhritarashtra is the one who should have given Pandavas their kingdom, but he had the power, but he did not use it. He had the power to give kingdom to Pandavas, but he was too much attached to his sons, and he let him control Dhritarashtra. So it's basically both. Dhritarashtra tried, but at the same time, he did not try. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Tia.
So like in many religions, there's a doomsday.
There's
and
what?
There doomsday. Like
yes.
Yeah. And is there like a doomsday in Hinduism? And like why or why not?
See, let me tell you something. When you are, in what class are you right now? What
8th.
standard are you? 8th. When you were in 1st standard, you knew what 2 + 2 was?
Yes.
Well, yes. And now you're in 8th standard. You know what 2 + 2 is, right?
Yes.
Yes. If I come to you in 1st standard and ask you, what is 5 × 5? Would you know?
Probably not.
Yes. And if you were in 5th standard, you would know what 5 into 5 is, right?
Yes.
So basically, when you were from first standard, you had not advanced knowledge, but the knowledge was there, right? It's the only thing that you were not eligible for that knowledge yet. Or even in 8th standard, if I ask you what's 100 plus 200, you will say 200. But if I ask you what is sine theta and cos theta, you wouldn't know that, because that's a subject matter for a higher class. Similarly, all these religions, it's basically to make you more advanced from an animalistic life. All religions, whether it be Sikhism, whether it be Muslim, whether it be Christianity, they give you knowledge, but that knowledge is just like 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. But when you become more advanced, when you keep on grasping knowledge, when you become a good personality, a good person in life without doing less sins and more spirituality, in the next life you took birth in other religions. When it's basically the soul is on a journey from first class to 10th class. So in the first class, you're born in such a religion when you want to kill animals and want to eat it because you want to enjoy your tongue, eating beef, eating chicken. So you get a birth in a Muslim religion. But when you are more advanced and when you have realized that, okay, it's wrong to kill animals, then in the next birth, you get a birth in you can say a Sikh family where they don't eat beef, but they eat chicken because you don't want to eat beef anymore. But when you become more realized, when you get more knowledge, when you become more advanced in spirituality, in the next birth, you get a birth in a better family, in a Hindu family maybe, where they won't eat beef, where they won't eat chicken, and they will have full knowledge that, okay, there is incarnation, there is this, there is this. The knowledge in Bible and Quran, I have read both. So that's why I'm telling you. In Bible and Quran, the knowledge is there, but it's just like 2 plus 2. But in Hinduism, in Sanatan Dharam, the knowledge is sine theta, cos theta. There they will tell you, okay, God created you, and when you die, you will go to heaven and hell. But in Sanatan Dharam, it's not like that. They give you everything, that how God created you, why God created you, how is God handling everything. Yes, heaven and hell is there, but it's not only heaven and hell. There is upper planetary systems, there is lower planetary systems. This is how many kinds of hell, this is how many kinds of heaven. This is how you get free from this cycle of birth and death. So it's just that the first class standard child would not know what sine theta is. Similarly, the soul is on journey from first class to 10th class. So as you progress in your spiritual life, you get birth in a better family, in a more spiritually realized family, and then you become to Sanatan Dharam. And even Sanatan Dharam, we have so many deities. That's a whole different class. But thing is, doomsday, it's basically end of Brahma's day. That is what called as doomsday. When Brahma's day ends, all the living souls again unmanifest themselves in the abdomen of Garbhodakshai Vishnuji. That is called doomsday. But now this can't be explained to a person who has no knowledge of God. So that's why they say, okay, you do good in your life, don't do bad in your life, believe in God, and after you die, you will go to heaven and hell. So just giving 2 plus 2, not sine theta, cos theta. The knowledge is right, but not complete knowledge. You got it?
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else?
All right.
All right.
So
Did you learn
next-
something new? Let me ask you questions now. You asked me questions, now let me ask you. Okay, I have a question here. Is it a sin to eat plants? Because they have life too. A very good question. Well, Krishna answers this in Bhagavad Gita and following chapters. Well, yes, it is a sin to eat plants. Or whatever you eat, it's a sin. That is why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachti tad aham bhakti upaharatam ashnami prayat atmanha. Even if you eat plants, even if you eat animals, it's a sin. Why? Why plants? Well, plants have life. We all know that. Plants are also souls. Killing is prohibited in religion. But Krishna says, whatever exists, it exists for my service. You want to eat? Okay, eat. But how you should eat? first offer it to Krishna. That is why in ISKCON or in any Vaishnav Dharam, it is always recommended whatever you eat, you offer it to God first. Even in Hinduism, this practice is very common from the very childhood, that whatever you eat, offer it to God first, eat only prasadam and pray to God that thank you for providing me this. Because everything is being provided by God. If I go into more detail, we'll talk about it in the following chapters, that how plants take birth, why plants exist, how some souls get into plants' bodies, and is it good to eat plants? Well, answer is don't be vegetarian, don't be non-vegetarian, be Krishnatarian. Eat vegetarian sattvic food, but offer it to Krishna and only eat prasadam. Whatever you eat, make it a sattvic diet, offer it to God, then eat it. That way, no sin is there, and moreover, you will advance in spirituality because that is offered to God first. That's why we never eat anything outside. Or even if we go outside, we eat sattvic diet, offer it to God first, pray to God that I offer it to you, then we eat it. Simple. And this practice should be done by everyone. Whatever you make at home, offer it to God first, then eat it. And you will even notice the change of taste in the food. If you go to any Krishna's temple, let's say if you go to ISKCON, and if you go to, let's say, other place where they don't offer food to God, and the same spices are used, same quantities used, you will find a different taste because God has already tasted it, and then he's offered it to you. So it will have a nice taste. Yes, Tia.
Okay, so since you said like everything is living, and
Yes.
like
Not everything, but plants are living. Yes.
yeah, like plants and animals both are living, right?
Yes.
And then if it doesn't really matter if everything's for the service of God, does it really matter what you eat and like how you like serve to him and like for prasadam and stuff?
Yes. See, there are three kinds of food. One is called mode of goodness, one is mode of passion, one is mode of ignorance. In Hindi, it's called Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic, Sanskrit, sorry, not Hindi. So, see, God loves everyone. God fulfills your desires. Whatever you desire, if it's right for you, God fulfills it. If someone has a desire that for the pleasure of my tongue, I want to eat animals. So the God has created animals as well. Some animals like chicken or goats that you can eat, but that occurs as sin because it's not good, right? Similarly, the personality who have realized that, okay, it's not good, I should not kill, living animals. So I can eat plants. Plants have a less amount of consciousness as compared to animals. Animals will feel pain when you die, when you kill them. Plants won't feel it. So that's why God has created plants and animals also. That if you wish to eat animals, okay, go eat animals. But that way you will have to face, law of karma. Even if you go to eat plants, there will be sin, but less sin as compared to killing an animal. That is why sattvic diet. Sattvic means the diet which has no onion, no garlic, which has no animal byproducts. It's just plants or vegetables, right? That in temples, for example, if you go to temple, you'll get a sattvic food. They won't use onion and garlic there. They won't use animals there to eat. They use only plants which have less consciousness, which won't feel when they are living or when they are dying. But they offer it to God first. They make it a prasadam, then they eat it. That way, there is no sin, there is no harm, and you advance. Yes, Vaibhav.
So why should we not have onion and garlic
Yes.
either?
Let me share you a link in the chat. It's a whole different topic. Onion, garlic are Rajasic time. You might have heard the story that how onion, garlic came into existence. Well, Vishnuji killed a demon, Rahu and Ketu. And that's how onion and garlic came into existence. And they are tamasic food. They are not good for your consciousness. You will feel more anxiety. You will have more greed. You'll have more lust when you eat onion and garlic. On the other hand, when you don't eat onion and garlic for a long period of time, you will start feeling peace. You will have no greed. Your consciousness will change. You will be more peaceful. You'll be more patient. So it's a different video. I'll share it. Now, this person is a very great person. If you hear to him in his other videos, definitely your consciousness will change. His name is Amrendra Prabhu. I recommend everyone to watch this video and show your family that this is why we should not eat onion and garlic. And even if you know, when you make something, a vegetable, a sabji, if you add onion and garlic into it, the whole taste of the sabji would change. The main taste in the vegetable would be onion and garlic. But if you don't add onion and garlic, you will feel the real taste of the sabji. Onion and garlic has so bad smell. Maybe you cannot realize it now because you are eating it. But once you quit eating onion and garlic, you will realize that how bad is the smell of onion and garlic. Everyone watch this video. All right. Anyone else?
As a medicine, we can eat though. Like if we have a medical reason.
See, in this video, you will find that yes, onion has medicinal capacities, onion and garlic, but those medicinal capacities are also bad for you. In this video, everything is explained scientifically, giving you the proofs that even in older times, in other countries like Russia, like Romaine, in Israel, no one used to eat onion and garlic. Everything is given in proper detail. Why you should not eat onion and garlic in that video. Yes, Tia?
I will watch it.
So like, since we know these days that like it is wrong to eat animals and like it's wrong to eat onions and garlics and what is right and what is wrong, like, so is this stuff like, did God actually tell us, or like did us humans?
Can you repeat from the can God tell us or something you said?
Okay, so you know that like how something is right and wrong, how you can eat non-veg and veg and like onion and garlic. Did God tell us about it, or did
Yes.
us humans like assume?
Good. So is it God who told us everything, or it is just like our own mental concoctions, our philosophy that some human has made this? Well, as I said, God loves everyone, right? If his son wants to eat animal, he has given rules and regulations that yes, you can eat animals, but in this way. For example, in India, there are some temples where they sacrifice a goat in front of Mother Kali, and then they eat it as a prasadam. Now, this is the way God has made it. For example, in Muslim, they don't eat, instead of halal, they only eat halal meat. Halal is a basic way of how to cut animals when you kill them. And if you kill them in a halal way, animal becomes unconsciousness and they won't feel that they are dead, that they are being cut off. That is called halal. So God has given a way that if you want to eat animals, okay, do it in this way so that they also don't feel any pain in halal way. On the other hand, if you want to come back to me, if you want to really be peaceful, if you want to be happy in life, if you don't have any, if you know the reality, if you got the spiritual knowledge and you understand this world is nothing, then you would want to go back to God in the real world. This world is just a reflection of the real world. Then God has given certain ways for that also. That, okay, be total sattvic. Don't be rajasic or tamasic. Be sattvic, eat only prasadam and serve me. And how to serve, and even serving God, it's total different experience. Total different experience. You see, until and unless, for example, if you want to eat a chocolate ice cream and you are eating a chocolate ice cream for like 10 years, now you tasted a strawberry ice cream after 10 years. And now strawberry ice cream, you're feeling more delicious. You're tasting it more delicious than chocolate ice cream. So it will be very easy for you to quit chocolate ice cream, right? Because you've already got a better taste in strawberry ice cream. Similarly, the taste of this material world, the taste of material happiness, the taste of watching movies, the taste of eating meat, the taste of eating anything you like, it's just there because you haven't tasted the strawberry ice cream yet. You haven't tasted the taste of serving God, taste of spirituality. When that taste of spirituality comes into your life, it will be very easy for you to quit onion and garlic, to follow all the rules and regulations, because you will be getting that taste of strawberry ice cream every day, and then you will not be, and you will not like to taste chocolate ice cream. Similarly, God has given strawberry ice cream and chocolate ice cream also. But okay, if you like chocolate ice cream, go chocolate ice cream, eat it for 10 years, for different lifetimes and lifetimes, lifetime and lifetime. And when you know this, that if there is a strawberry ice cream also, there is other world also. Then if you want to eat strawberry ice cream, okay, quit chocolate ice cream and follow strawberry ice cream. In that way, yes, God has given both animal eating also, plant eating also, prasadam eating also, for different people. Who want to enjoy meat eating, okay, meat eating is allowed. Who want to eat plants and animals, okay, that is also allowed. But who wants to come to me, okay, for that I'm giving you a special taste, a special strawberry ice cream. So once you taste that strawberry ice cream, you will be able to quit everything else. Just taste strawberry ice cream throughout your life and come. That's it. Understand?
Yes, thank you.
Finish the